And this is something that is, I believe, not only true of me, but I think is true of many more people. We have a tendency to want to put people in categories and keep them there. And I think that, especially with the growth of social networks and with people being constantly barraged by different kinds of communities and cultures compared with living in one place and staying in one place for your whole life, I think in the 21st century, many more people, actually that's their day-to-day experience.
But you've researched this also, I mean, professionally as a psychologist, right? I mean, the way in which kids develop their identities and their theological identities. What sort of God do you believe in? I mean, what is your belief?
I believe very much in the power of community. I don't necessarily believe that there's a guy out there with a long beard in the sky.
So, wait a minute. So why are you sometimes religious? That's the part I don't... Is that an existential decision?
For example, I believe very much in the power of study of ancient Jewish texts. We have Kiddush, and we, celebrate Shabbat, and we keep kashrut in our home.
Because you like the tradition.
I feel it connects me to the history of the Jewish people.
Which gives you an identity.
Which gives me something, which gives me...
meaning,
it's part
identity.
of who I am,
yeah. But it's not a worldview, a belief of, that's how the world was created and so on.
Well, interesting. I think you could make the argument that in Judaism that stuff has mattered a lot less anyway. Mainly it's been over thousands of years, mainly about practice and what you do rather than what you think.
Isn't that sort of the Yeshayahu Leibovich sort of thinking that it's an existential thing? You don't ask questions, and obviously you know nothing about God. You can't know anything about God. He is the sort of thing in itself of the the Kantian sort of concept of you can know nothing about him. There's nothing, and you obviously when you pray also, you request nothing from him. You expect nothing from him. You don't, so there's no interventionist God there.
Right.
In that sense, it's just you go through the motions, and this is what gives your life a focus.
Right. So Yeshayahu Leibovich gave me a lot of comfort as a teenager and in my early 20s when I was really struggling with this stuff, and I needed rationale, and I needed to figure out how did this all make sense. And somewhere in my 20s or towards my 30s, I stopped worrying so much about it and felt much more comfortable being more fluid in my beliefs and my practices, and connecting to those things which make sense to me, and trying to take as much from tradition as I can. So
your identity is your former British Orthodox. Now you're Israeli, and so did you ever feel that you were British, that you were part of the sort of the British people, the British nationality or identity, or was it always I'm a Jew and Zionist and I'm going to live in Israel and I'm just passing through here?
So it's very interesting. I think
passing through Hendon.
I think you've touched on one of the defining features of identity and how it changes over a lifetime.
It's fluidity.
Fluidity is number one, but number two is also that I felt more British. The most I've ever felt British is when I went to be a visiting professor in the United States. In Britain,
there you were a limey.
I was, I could say pretty much anything, and because they loved the accent, I could get away with anything in my classes. Yeah. But I'm joking about that. But actually, I do think that my British identity was much more salient to me when I was somewhere else. In Britain, I never felt myself as being British. I always felt myself as being other, as being Jewish. And now that I'm in Israel, look at the songs that I've chosen and the kinds of music I listen to on a regular basis. And when I write music and when I write essays or research, I'm writing in English, and I feel very connected to.
You basically requested songs that are written and performed by people who've taken massive amounts of drugs. Yes. I'm just saying.
I didn't notice.
It's just true. Elvis died from it. The Beatles, obviously, they were hallucinogenic.
I think they took less drugs than most people around them in the 60s.
Who? The Beatles?
Yeah.
No. You can read in Keith Richards' biography, Life, where he talks about, he took obviously enormous amounts of heroin, and he keeps writing about poor John Lennon could never keep up but wanted to and tried to, and he almost died many times trying to, and he sort of always had to sort of pick him up off the floor and get him some sort of medical assistance. So No.
Yeah, well, John's not here to contradict him.
No, he's not. And it's not because of drugs. But anyway, so let's hear the Beastie Boys.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you like about Intergalactic?
First of all,
they're Jews. Some of them, most of them,
two
of them.
I think three of them. I think all three are Jews.
One is
one
dead,
of them.
right?
One of them's dead,
died, yeah.
but he died Jewish.
Yeah.
I think I thought all three of them, but maybe I'm wrong. That's not the reason.
Let's just say they're not here to contradict.
Whoever, if there's another one, he can be an honorary Jew. It's okay.
Okay.
I love to dance, and I love dance music and hip hop. To an extent, but mainly dance. I love the mixture, in particular, between rock and dance whenever that happens. And in this case, this is a song which came out a little bit later, so I was a little bit too old to go clubbing to this song, but I liked it. And you get to a stage in life where pretty much the only time you get on a dance floor is at someone's bar mitzvah or wedding.
Yeah.
And I had a bet with my second daughter when she had her bar mitzvah. She's about to go into the army next week on Sunday, Moria. So 16 years ago when she celebrated her bar mitzvah.
It's a good chance just to just make sure everyone knows it. You've got one daughter who's now currently in California, right?
Yeah.
She's after her army
She
service.
just finished her army service, and she's a madricha at Camp Ramah in California.
Okay, and you've got your second daughter is now entering...
on Sunday. She's going into Baku.
Okay, and you've got a 16-year-old and an 11-year-old.
That's right.
Okay.
So when we celebrated Moria's bar mitzvah, I said, listen, I want to organize the music, and I stuck this song in there on her list, and she said, this is terrible, no one's going to dance to this, they're going to clear the dance floor.
Right.
So I said, no, I guarantee you, if we put it on, the dance floor will fill up.
Okay.
And I checked with all of my friends, all of them middle-aged, a little bit flabby like me, and we managed to fill the dance floor.
You did. Okay. Let's hear it. Are you going to dance now for us?
I will if you want.
Okay, how, when, and why did you and your wife decide that you want to make your life in Israel instead of England or America or something?
I would say...
Obviously, you had all the options.
We did, and we've spent some time in the U.S., and my wife's family is very much still based in England. We met... I would say it was probably a few months after we met. We met as teenagers. We've been together pretty much since we were 16. We in fact did our Israel tour together while we were still at high school, and I was pretty certain that at that point I wanted to move to Israel, and I think she became pretty certain also. So it was never a question. We never discussed it as an option or as an alternative. It was just clear this was what we were going to do.
What was it about Israel that you? Was it the ideological thing of I'm a Jew and this is the Jewish state, or was there something about the culture of the land, the climate? I don't know, the vibe, the groove that you like.
So since we've never spoken about it, I don't think I've ever really spoken about it with my wife. Actually, after all these years,
which I think we're talking about many things you've never spoken about. Yeah. Okay.
But the one thing that I would say is for me, I was very excited, and I still am today, by the story of this place. Is like you're joining the mainstream of of Jewish history. Something really exciting has happened. This is a crazy, exciting experiment, and I wanted from that age to be part of it.
But still, if you wouldn't have liked I'm saying again, the groove of the place, then you could have, liked it from afar. And sort of,
So that was what brought me back after I went. We spent 3.5 years in Seattle, in Washington.
When you were doing your postdoctorate?
That's right. Mm-hmm. So I did my PhD here. She finished hers in the UK before we moved to Israel, and we were both doing postdocs in America. And at that time, when we were coming back, it was in the middle of the Second Intifada. There was a lot of bombs and blowing up buses and all sorts of stuff. Mm-hmm. And
this was
people.
The 90s.
This was.
No, this was 2000.
This is in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And people were asking me, "What are you doing? Why the hell would you leave somewhere as quiet and as relaxing as this to go to that crazy place?"
You were in Seattle then.
Yeah.
Right?
And at that point, I had. The idea about joining this exciting history didn't work so much. It was much more about the groove. I missed this place like hell. I felt when I moved back in that first couple of weeks, like life had suddenly started moving at twice the speed, and was 10 times as interesting. There's something about the energy of this place. People who will stop you in the street and tell you how to live your life. People expecting things to move quickly from one point to another. There's just this energy that in London is certainly missing. There's a coldness and a greyness to life in London, although I love London, I love Britain, and I enjoy the times that I go back. I love British culture. Most of the TV and and the magazines and so on is all British still that I enjoy. But there's something about the coldness and the laid backness and the expecting things to be done for you. I just love that get up and go and the energy of the people here.
So the entrepreneurship.
It's entrepreneurship. It's an overall groove. People know how to live their life and enjoy themselves. And yeah, they complain, but they complain in a different way. It's not the British mustn't grumble. Yeah. It's much more about isn't life terrible, but aren't we having a good time?
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's a good way of defining it. Did the language come easily to you?
Well, I went to a Jewish school, and my father is a big Hebraist. I don't know how much of that filtered through. He loves speaking in Hebrew. He still lives in London. But he absolutely loves reading and speaking in Hebrew. So I think he somehow passed some of that passion on. Since I spent 2 years in Israel between high school and going back to study at college, I picked up, I think, most of my Hebrew at that point.
Okay, so when you immigrated, you were sort of.
I was kind of a little. I had a lot of polishing to do when I started teaching and started managing other people in Hebrew. It became much more challenging. But I think most of it happened in those 2 years.
Yeah, many Anglo-Saxons have that sort of very strong accent that sort of immediately tags them as.
Yeah, so I think I still have a bit of an accent. People tell me that I don't, but I think I do. And the thing is that they just don't know exactly where to place me. They know I'm not American. They're not sure if I'm British. Maybe they don't know what I am.
They know you're not natives.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Next song, The Stone Roses. I Want to Be Adored. What do you want to say about this one?
Okay, so this is for two reasons. Also, first of all, the time it came out. This came out in late 1989. It was exactly the time that I got engaged. And I remember buying this album and having a very intimate engagement party for my friends. There was only about 20, 30 people in the room, and putting this album on and listening to it in the background. So that has a very historical and biographical resonance. But the other thing is that as an educator and someone who deals with leadership, I think we're all of us, educators and leaders, constantly battling with what I would call the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination to just seek adoration and want to be worshipped at the same time as wanting to melt into the background and allow people to develop and grow on their own.
So there's facilitators
exactly.
to people and be rock stars.
So we live in this kind of tension between, sometimes I talk about the tension between courage and modesty, but I think there's a line in here which says, I don't need to sell my soul, it's already in me. So I think there's this idea that we have all within us this kind of inclination to want to be adored, and we have to somehow use it for creative and positive purposes.
It's a narcissistic impulse at the
right.